The bonfire roared with confidence until a sudden gust of wind tore through the campsite, lifting embers like a swarm of angry fireflies.
Winds shifting, everybody back from the fire.
Glowing cinders sailed past the stone ring and into the dry brush. A single spark could turn this night into a wildfire.
Move. Get to the clearing now.
The brush is catching. Before anyone could reach the water bucket, the tree line erupted. A pregnant bobcat burst from the shadows, dragging a heavy canvas tarp between her jaws. The tarp was soaked, dripping creek water, and she hauled it with a fierce, unbreakable purpose, straight toward the licking flames. She dragged it across the fire's edge, smothering the advancing embers under a hiss of steam, and then she was gone, vanished into the dark pines as silently as she had appeared.
Did a bobcat just save us?
Kenneth didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the smoking canvas, a tarp bearing faded troop markings he hadn't seen in years. The scouts crowded behind him, a chorus of whispered questions, but Kenneth walked slowly toward the tarp as if approaching an unexploded bomb.
Mr. Kenneth, what is that tarp? How did she know to use it?
This weight, this weave, I've felt it before, but where?
The canvas was cold and heavy, soaked through with creek water and smelling of moss. In the firelight, he made out a faded troop number stamped near one edge.
This is our number, Troop 204, from years back.
But how would a bobcat get our old tarp?
Kenneth turned the fabric over. The grommets were rusted, the stitching worn, but it was unmistakably theirs, a tarp he hadn't seen since. He couldn't remember when.
I don't know yet, but I am going to find out. First light, I'll follow her tracks.
You can't go alone. What if she's dangerous?
Kenneth shook his head, his gaze still lost in the dark pines. The image of that pregnant bobcat dragging a miracle through the flames refused to leave him. At first light, Kenneth knelt beside the creek where the bobcat had dragged the tarp. Paw prints, deep and deliberate, led into the underbrush. He followed them uphill, through ferns still wet with dew, until the trail disappeared into a dense thicket of blackberry brambles. Through a gap in the thorns, he saw her, the bobcat, lying on her side, her swollen belly rising and falling with slow, pained breaths. Her amber eyes found his, but there was no threat in her gaze, only a tired, ancient patience.
She's not afraid of me. Why?
And then he saw the notch, a clean crescent missing from her right ear, an old wound that had healed into a permanent signature.
I know that mark. I've seen it before. But when?
Without a sound, she rose and slipped deeper into the thicket, her belly swaying, leaving Kenneth alone with a hollow ache he couldn't name. By the time he walked back into camp, the sun had burned off the fog, but a cloud had settled in his chest.
That ear, it's a piece of a puzzle I can't even see the edges of.
Back at camp, the tarp lay spread on the table like evidence from a crime scene. The scouts murmured among themselves, but Kenneth heard only static.
Mr. Kenneth, you've been staring at that tarp for an hour. What aren't you telling us?
Kenneth didn't answer. He walked to his backpack and pulled out a worn leather logbook, its cover cracked with age.
I've kept this since my first year as troop leader. Every trip, every project, every rescue. If that notch means what I think it means, the answer is buried in here.
He opened the logbook and began flipping through years of entries, the pages whispering with old pencil marks.
What are you looking for, exactly?
A record of an animal rescue. A very specific one, from a long time ago.
His fingers slowed as he reached a section from 6 summers ago. A faded photograph was tucked into the binding.
It's here. I can feel it. The reason she didn't run.
He turned the page, and the years fell away. The memory surfaced like a held breath finally released. 6 summers ago, on a solo scout trip, Kenneth had been checking trail markers when he heard a thin, desperate cry. He found the kitten wedged between rocks, no bigger than his palm, her fur matted and her eyes barely open.
Easy, little one. I am not going to hurt you.
He wrapped her in his scout tarp, the same olive drab canvas that had kept him dry in 100 storms. Back at camp, he warmed milk and fed her with an eyedropper, her tiny body trembling finextraturally. The troop took turns caring for her, Within a week, she was pouncing on shoelaces and stealing bandanas. In the logbook, Kenneth wrote, "Rescued orphan bobcat kitten. Right ear notched, likely from a hawk. Nicknamed her Scout." He had pasted a photo beside the entry. A blurry shot of a spotted scrap of fur asleep on his jacket. Now, 6 years later, that photo stared up at him, and the notched ear in the picture matched the one in the forest. The weeks that followed blurred into a chaotic, joyful rhythm. Tiny growls, stolen socks, and the thunder of miniature paws.
She's getting stronger every day, too strong to keep here.
He documented every milestone. The first stumble pounce, the day she shredded his old boot, the stubborn notch that never grew back. At night, she would worm into his sleeping bag, her purr, a low rumble that vibrated through the tent fabric.
You are a wild thing, little Scout. You belong out there, not in some windowsill.
But whenever he looked at the forest edge, a knot tightened in his chest that no Scout training could untie.
She's imprinted on me. I could keep her. But that would be for me, not for her.
The notched ear had become a marker, not of injury, but of identity, a signature he would recognize anywhere.
Soon, little one, we'll take the long hike back to the clearing. Then you are on your own.
He had circled a date in the logbook with a heavy hand, a release, a goodbye he'd been dreading from the moment he picked her up. The morning came gray and still. Kenneth carried the carrier to the clearing and unfastened the latch.
Time to go. Scout, you are not a house pet. You never were.
She didn't run. She turned and pressed her head against his knee, the notched ear twitching with something like doubt. Then, with a last look over her shoulder, she vanished into the underbrush, her tawny coat dissolving into the shadows. Kenneth stood rooted until the birds resumed their chatter. Then he picked up the empty carrier. That evening, he opened the logbook and wrote the final entry in a shaking hand. The entry read, "Release Scout at the northwest clearing." She hesitated, but eventually disappeared into the woods. May she live long. He hadn't looked at that page since. Until now. And now the photo matched the notch, the tarp matched the canvas, and the location matched exactly where they were sitting. Every detail from that summer was reflected in the animal that had dragged a miracle through the fire.
Look at this, Thomas. The notch, the year, the location. It all fits, but it's impossible.
You think that Bobcat is Scout? The one you raised from a kitten?
Kenneth's mind raced. He needed more than a logbook. He needed proof. They hiked to the thicket and strapped a camera to an oak. Its lens pointed at the den like a silent promise. For 3 nights, they checked the memory card and found only wind-blown leaves and moonlit stillness. On the 4th morning, a grainy infrared image lit the laptop screen, a faint silhouette and a crescent-shaped gap in the ear. Kenneth zoomed in, his finger trembling on the trackpad. The notch was unmistakable, but the grayscale left room for doubt.
It's her, but if I am wrong, if I let hope cloud my eyes, I'll be chasing a ghost.
How many bobcats would drag a tarp into a fire? It has to be her.
We need a daylight shot. Something I can match to the logbook without squinting. Until then, we keep watching.
The next morning, a daylight photo filled the screen. The bobcat mid-stride, the notched ear unmistakable.
It's her, no doubt. The ear, the tarp, the place. Scout came back.
Kenneth placed the logbook photo beside the monitor, 2 images separated by 6 years and an impossible act of loyalty.
So the bobcat that pulled that tarp into the fire is the same one you raised from a bottle.
She remembered the canvas. That tarp was her whole world when she was small.
The Scouts fell silent, their usual energy replaced by a weight that had no name: awe, gratitude, and a prickling sense of responsibility.
What do we do now? She's wild, and she's going to have cubs any day.
We do nothing. We give her space. This is her home, and we're just passing through.
That evening, a low whine drifted from the thicket, the first cry of a bobcat in labor.
She's bringing new life into the world, right where I set her free 6 years ago.
Kenneth trained his binoculars on the hollow log, his breath shallow. Through the narrow opening, he saw the bobcat strain, then a slick, dark shape slide free, one by one. Over hours, 3 tiny cubs emerged, blind, mewling, and achingly vulnerable. The mother cleaned them with fierce, rhythmic licks, her notched ear twitching at every forest sound.
3 cubs. She made it. 6 years ago, she fit in my hand, and now she's a mother.
By the next morning, the cubs were already tumbling outside the den, a tangle of spots and clumsy paws.
She really did it. And she saved us first, before she even had them.
A quiet understanding settled over the troop, not obligation, but a deep, wordless debt.
We have to do something for her, something that lasts.
But what? She's wild. We can't just give her a thank you card.
She gave us a miracle. We owe her a miracle back. But it has to be something that doesn't tame her, only protects her. What if we built a monitoring station? A small shelter with cameras, a way to watch over her without ever getting too close.
That's a huge project. We'd need park permission, materials, real plans.
We can do it. It could count toward your citizenship merit badge. We'll learn everything we need along the way.
The scouts glanced at each other, some hesitant, some lighting up with the kind of fire that only grows when you dare to build something.
But what if building it scares her off? What if the cubs leave and never come back?
We'll place it far from the den. Use motion cameras. It'll be hands-off science, protection without interference.
Slowly, the circle of faces hardened from uncertainty into a quiet, shared resolve. The debt they felt was transforming into a plan.
I can help draw the plans. My dad's a contractor. He'll check if the structure is safe.
That's the scout way. Be prepared. Do a good turn. This station will be ours, and ours for her.
But first they would need park approval, materials, and a mountain of paperwork. And the ranger's permission wouldn't come easily. The storm rolled over the ridge without warning. Black clouds chewing the sky, wind snapping branches like twigs.
That hollow log sits right at the bend. If the creek rises, even a foot, the den floods.
Against his own strict rule, Kenneth pulled on his rain jacket and pushed into the downpour, guilt and fear tangling in his throat.
Just a look. I won't get close.
At the thicket's edge, the mother stood like a sentinel over the log, her hackles lifted. She hissed once but did not charge. He could see the cubs beyond her, a tangle of dry fur on a high mossy shelf, untouched by the rising puddles.
She gave me a warning, not a fight. After all these years, she still knows the difference.
He retreated in silence. By morning, the forest smelled of wet earth and survival, and a single email lit the camp laptop. The message from the park ranger read, "Your monitoring station proposal is approved. Construction may begin immediately. Keep the faith."
We're in. Now, the real work begins for her.
At dawn, the scouts hauled lumber down the trail, their pant legs soaked with dew and their resolve harder than the oak planks on their shoulders.
Remember, we're guests here. Minimum noise, maximum respect.
Kenneth guided them through every joint and bracket, transforming rough pine into a skeleton that rose from the earth one careful bolt at a time. Day after day, the structure grew, walls of cedar, a roof pitched to shed snow, and a small solar panel glinting through the canopy. Through the ferns, amber eyes watched. The bobcat settled on a mossy boulder 50 yards away, her cubs tumbling at her paws.
She's not running. She's just studying us.
The cubs didn't share their mother's caution. One bold male waddled to the edge of the clearing, sniffing a dropped work glove with comic suspicion.
Don't touch them. Let them decide when to trust us.
By the end of the second week, the station stood weather-tight and waiting, its camera port aimed exactly at the hollow log, but the bobcat still kept her distance, a silent question hanging between them. Would she ever claim this offering as part of her territory? At dusk, the bobcat emerged from the thicket with her cubs in a single file, padding silently toward the construction site.
Nobody move. Nobody breathe.
She's not stopping. She's leading them right past us.
The cubs paused to sniff a coiled rope, but the mother kept walking, a deliberate, unhurried path that circled the station and continued on.
She's not just tolerating us. She's showing her cubs that we're part of the landscape now.
No hiss, no flattened ears. The notched ear flicked once as she passed, and then she disappeared over the ridge, cubs scrambling behind.
She just gave us permission. That was the welcome we were waiting for.
Does this mean she'll actually use the station?
I think she just told us she's not going anywhere, and she trusts that we won't either.
That night, for the first time, the camera caught her silhouette on the station's roof, her cubs tumbling over the solar panel, a wild family claiming a human gift as their own. The station needed only a nameplate. Kenneth had saved a square of polished cedar for this moment, sanded smooth by a dozen small hands.
We should call it Ranger's Watch. She's a guardian, a protector of these woods and everyone in them.
Ranger. It fits. She's always been more than a wild thing, a silent, loyal soul who remembers.
He pressed the plaque against the station wall, the words Ranger's Watch etched deep. The hammer's ring carried through the clearing. The troop gathered in a half circle, the station behind them, the hollow log visible beyond. A silence more profound than any prayer.
6 years ago, I wrote in this logbook, "May she live long." Today, I write something new. A debt of kindness was repaid.
She'll never know we named it for her, but maybe that's the point. The best thanks are the ones you give without needing a thank you back.
As the sun dipped, each scout silently touched the badge now sewn onto their sashes. A new one, earned not by shouting, but by listening. A photograph was taken. 12 boys, one tired leader, and a promise staked into the earth with cedar and hope. Behind them, amber eyes glowed from the shadows. Ranger had watched the ceremony from her den, the notched ear still as stone. That night, as the campfire dwindled to a soft glow, a rustle from the tree line stilled every whispered conversation. Ranger emerged not as a ghost this time, but as a mother leading a parade of 3 tiny spotted shadows.
She brought them to us. Not to the station, to us.
The boldest cub wandered straight to Thomas's boot and pressed its wet nose against the leather, purring like a tiny motor.
She's not just trusting us. She's showing her children that we're safe.
Kenneth's hand trembled against his knee. He didn't reach out. He just let the moment breathe, a circle of 12 boys and one wild heart.
I don't think I'll ever be afraid of the forest again. Not after this.
By morning, the story was no longer theirs alone. A news van rumbled down the dirt road, its crew drawn by the impossible headline. Kenneth stood before the camera, the tarp in his hands and Ranger's Watch behind him, and told a story 6 years in the making. The photograph that went viral was not the fire or the rescue. It was a bobcat on the roof of a cedar station, 3 cubs at her side. Weeks later, Troop 204 received their citizenship badges under a clear blue sky, the station and its plaque gleaming behind them like a promise kept. That evening, Kenneth sat alone at the station desk, his logbook open to a fresh page. He wrote, "Ranger's Watch is complete. 12 scouts dedicated not just a building, but a covenant of stewardship." A year later, the pines whispered a familiar secret. From the thicket, a silhouette with a notched ear led a new litter into the clearing. Ranger had returned, her coat thick with winter, her eyes full of that same ancient patience.
She really does come back every year. It's like she made a promise.
The new cubs tumbled over each other, curious and unafraid, as if they'd grown up hearing stories about these strange 2-legged creatures. Kenneth cracked open the logbook once more and added a single line. He wrote, "Today, Ranger returned with 3 new cubs. The circle continues."
We didn't rescue her. She rescued us right back.
5 years after the fire, Kenneth sat on the bench outside Ranger's Watch as the sun bled gold through the pines. Above him, on the station roof, Ranger lay with her latest litter, grooming them with slow, rhythmic strokes.
You remembered the canvas. You saved us. We'll never forget.
The bobcat paused her grooming and met his eyes, her amber gaze unblinking. Then, with a slow, deliberate blink, a cat's kiss, she sealed a bond that words could never capture.
That was the most honest thank you I've ever received.
For a long moment, neither moved. The forest held its breath, and the past 6 years dissolved into one perfect, fragile instant. He didn't need to reach out. The distance between them was not emptiness. It was trust. Ranger turned back to her cubs, and Kenneth remained until the last light faded. carrying a peace he'd never known he needed. In that single, silent blink, a 6-year debt of kindness was repaid in full. Some stories don't end. They echo through the pines long after the campfire is cold. The scouts who once ran from flames now brought their own sons to the clearing, telling the story in hushed, reverent tones. Ranger continued to return, each spring revealing a new generation of spotted guardians, her notched ear a familiar landmark. The station weathered countless storms, its cedar turning silver with age, its cameras still recording data for conservation. And Kenneth, his beard now fully gray, still sat on that bench every sunset, a logbook resting on his knee. Sometimes he would open the worn pages and trace the old photograph with his thumb. The kitten he once wrapped in canvas, that tiny, trembling scrap of fur, had no idea she would become a legend. Ranger's watch stood, not just as a building, but as proof that kindness, once given, never truly disappears. It simply waits, patient as amber eyes in the dark, for the moment it is needed again. And in the stillness of the forest, the debt was never forgotten. A bobcat had repaid a kindness, not with words but with a wet canvas tarp. And in doing so, she taught 12 boys what it truly means to be wild. She taught them that the wild is not hate, it is memory, it is loyalty. It is a debt that crosses both time and species. And she taught them what it means to be human. To be human is to intervene with tenderness and then to step back, to build shelters not for yourself, but for those who cannot ask, to earn a slow blink from amber eyes and feel the earth shift. The tarp was just canvas and water. The miracle was remembering, and in that remembering, a bobcat became a ranger, and 12 boys became men. Evening settled over the forest, soft and violet, the last light catching on the cedar planks of Ranger's watch. A silhouette formed on the roof, Ranger, her notched ear a quiet crown against the fading sky. On the bench below, the logbook lay open to a page damp with dew. The ink had blurred, but the final words were still legible. The ring continues. Ranger turned her amber eyes to the horizon, as if reading the forest's oldest secret. A single blink, then stillness. The camera on the station whirred softly, still recording, still protecting. One by one, the stars emerged, and the hollow log beneath the pines grew dark. Ranger's watch stood silent, a promise carved in cedar. And then, at last, the screen faded to black. Ranger's watch still stands, silent and strong, among the ancient pines. The bobcats return every spring, the notched ear a familiar beacon. New cubs tumble in the grass, playing where the bonfire once roared. The logbook pages are yellowed, but the handwriting remains. Kindness does not expire. It only changes shape, and sometimes it returns, dragging your own salvation into the fire. A bobcat repaid a debt, not with words, but with a wet canvas tarp. 12 boys became men, and a tiny kitten became a legend. Thank you for witnessing this story of loyalty, memory, and hope. Ranger's watch still stands. The bobcats return every spring,